the state's elected officials and high-ranking public service. The panel should have subpoena power and resources to mount investigations and issue advisory opinions. Virginia also needs tighter rules governing campaign contributions. It is just one of a handful of states that puts no limits whatsoever on contributions and imposes barely any rules on the uses in which those contributions can be put. And it goes on to say that it's no accident that Virginia receiving a failing grade and was ranked 47th out of 50 states in a comprehensive report on state ethics laws. It's time for that to change. This bill does a lot of good, but it also has some shortfalls. And we need to work together to do that. Now, I didn't bring my prop, but if you think about a balloon, and I'm talking about in reference to the campaign refinance reforms, if you think of a balloon, when you cut off one area of that balloon, the other side just pops right up. We had someone out there who stroked a check for $177,000 to the governor. And you think if you cut off one loophole, that other side won't open right back up? You write me a check for $177,000 to my campaign account, and I'm the most popular kid on the playground. And everyone here in this body knows it. And we've got to cut off the entire loopholes in government. And that's where I think this falls short. I want to vote for this bill, but I can't. I think we ought to continue to improve it, and I'm going to put up a red light because I want us to improve it. I want to restore the confidence in government, and I think that this bill right now falls short of that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Surovell.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like the gentleman from Arlington, I just want to further amplify some of the concerns that he raised, mainly the fact that this bill lacks an independent ethics commission with any kind of real either subpoena authority or any kind of audit authority. I mean, we all know why we're here. Somebody got caught. The reality is that there's probably a lot more out there. There's probably a lot more out there that would come to light. You got to remember, we're not just talking about ourselves. We're talking about local governments. We're talking about thousands of elected officials across the Commonwealth of Virginia that this law affects. Right now, the reality is that anybody in this body, anybody who's running for office in the Commonwealth of Virginia, who's either in office or trying to be in office or in office in local government, could write a check to themselves, put it on their campaign finance report, and say it's for yard signs, and they would never, ever, ever get caught. That is a problem. There is no accountability in our system. There's hardly any way to get caught in our system. And until we have a real body that comes in here and looks at these things independently, it has subpoena power, and that is required to do audits, the only time anyone is ever going to get caught is when there's a whistleblower or they get caught up in some other ancillary thing and somebody stumbles into it. And that's not acceptable. Our constituents are owed more than that. They're owed the most clean and honest government we can have. And that means we've got to have an independent commission with audits. And until you see that, Mr. Speaker, until you see that line the governor even laid down, I think you're going to continue to see red lights on this side of the aisle. I would encourage the body to vote against the bill.
Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo.
Speaker, speaking to the bill, please.
Gentleman has the floor.
The comments that have been made on two topics. One, it lacks campaign finance reform, and it lacks an independent body. First of all, when you're talking about campaign finance reform, you're talking about a whole different issue. This is not about campaign financing. This is about things that elected representatives get personally. One of my pet peeves is when someone says, "How much money did you get from X, business?" I said, Dave Albo never got anything. The only person who ever gets wealthy off a campaign donation is the postman, the printer, and yard sign makers. And the consultant. Yeah, you know them. So this bill is not about campaign finance. We can have that debate one day. Somebody put a bill in, we can talk about it. This is about things that elected representatives get. And it dramatically restricts it. It sets a cap of $100 on everything, on tangible and intangible. And then it does some other great things because it allows you to be able to go to Rotary Club, Civic Association meetings, and other widely attended events, and it allows you to be able to do your job. As for an independent commission, you don't need an independent commission because the Commonwealth attorneys are authorized to enforce these laws. If someone breaks the laws, it's a crime. The Commonwealth attorney can investigate it. Now, I used to be in the minority many, many years, Mr. Kilgore and I and others here. I know how it works. What you do when you're trying to make a big political issue is you take one thing out of a bill and you blow it out of proportion so you can write brochures on it. This is a bill that dramatically increases the restrictions that elected representatives throughout this state have on what they can receive personally. And I hope it be the pleasure of the House to pass the bill.
Gentleman from Shenandoah, Mr. Gilbert.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that the gentleman from Fairfax is aware that there is already an entity that exists in the Commonwealth of Virginia that has subpoena power. And if an elected official falsifies a campaign finance report, he is guilty of a Class 5 felony. If an elected official, under the terms of this bill, files a false disclosure under the Conflict of Interest Act, he's guilty of a Class 5 felony. The entity to which I referred is called the grand jury, and they exist very effectively at both the state and federal level, as we have seen in recent history. And so, Mr. Speaker, if the Washington Post or anybody else, if anyone thinks there is no recourse under the law or under this bill for bad actors and bad actions, they are mistaken. In fact, they are mistaken. They are either mistaken or they are misrepresenting what the bill does, Mr. Speaker. And for there to be the suggestion that there is no teeth in a Class 5 felony, that I would suggest our Commonwealth's attorneys and our criminal justice system are much more adept at enforcing than some so-called independent commission that will be, I'm sure, filled with people who are not independent at all. And my contention has been throughout this debate as to this independent commission that it will not be independent, that it will not be nonpartisan, that it will be used only to settle political scores. But the grand jury, through the criminal justice system, is used very effectively every day to catch people doing bad things. And there's no question that under this bill and existing law, that if any of the concerns that have been addressed here today, if any of those scenarios play out, that people can and will be held accountable. So I encourage the body to vote for this bill that, as the gentleman from Fairfax says, dramatically strengthens our ethics laws and reporting and transparency requirements here in the Commonwealth, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The gentleman from Salem, Mr. Habib.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Gentleman may proceed.
Let me remind the body of a couple things and make a couple comments. 100% of the people in this body who were here last year voted for last year's bill. Every one of the things that has been enunciated in opposition to this bill existed with the bill they voted for last year. Last year's bill did not have the things that the delegate from Fairfax has asked for. Last year's bill did not have the things that delegate from Arlington has asked for, yet they voted for it. Notwithstanding what the Washington Post said last year, they voted for last year's bill. So let's talk about what a no vote here means, because you've already endorsed the existing framework. If you vote no, it means you believe a $250 cap is better than a $100 cap. That's fine for you to believe that. I disagree with you. I do not believe a $250 cap is appropriate. I believe a $100 cap is appropriate. If you vote no, you believe you should be able to travel as much as you want, anywhere you want, without any pre-approval. That's fine if you believe that, but a no vote means you're voting against pre-approval of travel. Mr. Speaker, if you vote no, you believe that you should be allowed to take uncapped intangible gifts. That's fine if you believe that, because that's what you voted for last year. This bill says, no, that distinction's not appropriate. Let's apply the same cap to tangible and intangible gifts. So again, if you voted for the bill last year and you like that system and you don't want to make it better, vote against this bill.
The gentleman from Loudoun, Mr. Minshew.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would associate myself with the comments made by the gentleman from Salem in talking about the various planks in this bill, how they are both a strengthening and refinement and improvement on last year's bill, which passed here by unanimous vote. But
I would advise my friends, the gentleman from Arlington and the gentleman from Fairfax, that they are welcome to file bills next year in order to allow their comments given on the floor today to be considered. This bill is not perfect. I'm not sure perfection is obtained in any piece of legislation that is done this session. But this bill is a dramatic and good refinement and probably, Mr. Speaker, one of the most bipartisan pieces of legislation that this body did this session. If you would look at the history of the gentleman from Shenandoah's bill, you will see a very liberal use of incorporation where concepts given by the minority were brought into this bill. This is a sound bill, and I urge it to be approved.
Gentleman from Alexandria, Mr. Krupicka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Last year, the majority of this chamber voted against floor amendments to put oversight on travel. Last year, the majority of this chamber voted against floor amendments to try to reduce the cap. Last year, the majority of this chamber voted against floor amendments to try to take care of the tangible-intangible separation. What's happened over the last 12 months? What's happened in the last 12 months is we've seen a former governor indicted on multiple counts and found guilty and convicted on multiple counts. I appreciate that we're all coming back this year with a newfound enthusiasm for ethics reform. And I'm glad that we are taking it seriously because last year, a lot of the amendments we offered on our side of the aisle were rejected by the majority in this room. But we shouldn't leave session this year with a need to come back next year and make more changes because we didn't finish our job. Last year, we didn't finish our job, which is why we're doing it again this year. I'm voting no today because we've got more work to do on this, and I don't want to come back next year. Thank you, Mr. Chamber.
As you are